Well, the number of child abuse reports to El Paso County Human Services is the most in the entire state.
There's also an innovative, one-of-a-kind service center in our region to help kids who've been abused. Bill Folsom is here with continuing coverage on the center's first year of operation.
Yeah, Allison, Safe Passage introduced an innovative model of collaboration to help kids who are victims of abuse. It's been important this year because more kids have needed help as we've come out of the pandemic. A whimsical exterior. It's a first step toward putting victims of child abuse at ease. Safe Passage is a center dedicated to justice and recovery for kids victimized by the manipulation of child abusers.
They beat down your self-esteem. They say things like, if you tell, no one will love you. No one will believe you.
That statement based on experience. Doris Donnelly supports Safe Passage because a center like this could have made a difference when she was a kid.
Back in 50 years ago, I had to tell my story multiple times.
The longtime Colorado Springs resident now lives a very full life with family and friends. She also openly shares her story of facing sexual abuse as a child.
I don't feel like it defines me anymore, but I carried shame for years that this had happened to me.
She says her experience shows why a program like Safe Passage is important. When she was 9, she spoke up about abuse by a family member. It became a lengthy, intimidating, and scary ordeal. One day, another, and more. A police station, then hospital, over to Human Services, a foster home, and court.
Sitting across the table with a microphone pointed at me, and they are asking all sorts of adult-style questions to a 9-year-old child. What I would have said is an intrusive physical, particularly for a 9-year-old. I have a vivid memory of walking down the sidewalk with a grocery bag and holding my sister's hand and being put into a car with someone that we didn't know. I think a lot of adults are afraid of a courtroom. I was definitely afraid of a courtroom as a 9-year-old. And I'm thinking, didn't they hear me the first time? Are they not understanding what I'm telling them? But now I'm starting to shut down.
She remembers feeling to blame for possibly hurting her family. Then there was a not guilty verdict in court.
Unfortunately, he was found innocent, and a while later, I was put back into my home with him, and then the abuse continued until I was 18 and left home.
You can't lose the fact that a child had to be brave enough to share something that is shameful, is a secret, that they might feel they're to blame for, and they've risked everything sometimes to tell someone that they want that sexual abuse to stop. They want that abuse to stop.
Maureen Basenberg is executive director of Safe Passage. From January to September of this year, they've served nearly 1,200 victims from El Paso and Teller counties. This graphic from El Paso County Human Services shows hotline reports. Numbers dropped during the pandemic. They're now rising. Fears that abuse was underreported during the pandemic proved true as kids went back to school full time.
We definitely saw an increase in cases and reports August, September.
Safe Passage is a one-of-a-kind model in Colorado. It co-locates most agencies involved in child abuse cases under one roof.
The child's able to come to Safe Passage. They're able to tell a trained interviewer about what has happened to them. They have an advocate that stands next to them, helps their caregiver navigate what comes next. Meanwhile, law enforcement's doing what they need to do to ascertain safety along with Department of Human Services. We have a medical provider that's going to assist with any forensic medical needs, questions, exams. But we also have mental health here on site.
A center where a child can feel welcome, safe, and supported, now marking 1 year.
All of this for our community was a theoretical model, right? When we approached and said, we'd like to engage in this. And now a year after, we can point to countless successes where we've all worked better together. And kids and families have felt that difference.
They work together for the good of the child, but they don't keep re-traumatizing the child by having to tell the story over and over.
Compared to her own experience facing child abuse, Donnelly sees Safe Passage as a model that minimizes additional trauma to abuse victims and helps them get away from a life of fear and shame.
It is not your fault. It is not the child's fault. It's not the teenager's fault. Abuse, that is the pedophile. That is their fault.
Now, child Abuse reports in the aftermath of the pandemic will likely continue. It's due to the timeline for kids developing trust with someone they feel like they can tell. That varies. For some, it's months, others years. It's important they know there is help. Mike?